Yeah. Excellent. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween!
My favorite holiday.
Mine
I love
too.
it. Oh, good. Really? Yeah. October's my
Yes,
favorite.
totally. My
And
my
my
hap-
birthday.
happy Halloween with the haunted ghosts.
Oh yeah. I was eating off of my I've got a plate that's basically that, but I was good and took it to the kitchen and it's because it was dirty after I ate on it.
That's a good
So
thing.
I
You
can't
wouldn't want to
show it
show the
off.
messy plate. Yeah.
It just had that biscuit on it. It was really good. The soup was in a bowl.
Well, there you go.
Um, we are short one Travis tonight, but we will soldier on without him.
We'll miss him, especially since I wanted to hear his thoughts about some of this stuff. But
Yeah, I just pledged him, so to get that
oh,
biscuit.
poor
I pledged him
Travis.
for a biscuit.
We'll have to warn him to run and smell bad.
Yeah, don't watch out for that green gunk. Uh,
So witches. We're talking witches.
Witches. So tonight it is just me and Megan, and we're talking about Witches. And Witches is a book published by Image Comics, which is kind of known for their, I don't want to say quirky, like offbeat sort of comics. They have a lot of artistic freedom, I guess would be a good
Risk taking, which is
risk
how
taking. Yeah, I like that.
Scott Snyder definitely describes it.
Yeah, so a lot of liberties for the creators to make things that they want to do without having a lot of editorial smackdown, which is both good and bad, depending on the situation.
And originalness, they don't have to stay in tropes of certain character families or whatnot. They can go create amazing new, very scary things.
Yes. So just a brief spoiler-free-ish summary of Witches, although if you do stick around, we will be talking about the book into spoilers. So if you are one of those people that would not like to know what happens before you read it, you should turn this off and go read it and then come back and watch this after you've read it.
Yes.
But basically, we've got this family, this mom, dad, and teenage daughter who there have been some mysterious accidents and things that have been happening to them. There's a lot of rumors and things with the daughter, so they decide to pick up and move to a small town nearby. Unfortunately, the rumors kind of follow them, and then you kind of discover that there's this weird magic, witches, evil things that are kind of involved, and it doesn't end well for most people involved.
Not well at all. And as they say,
yeah.
they're not pointy hat witches.
Yeah.
They are much scarier witches.
Yes. The writer on this is Scott Snyder, the artist is Jack, and the colorist is Matt Hollingsworth. They are all creators you might have seen doing other things. I know Snyder's pretty well known for his Batman stuff.
I am a Scott Snyder fangirl.
I was going to ask. I assumed you were, so I was going to ask.
I'm a big fan. Yeah. The Batman run is amazing, Court of Owls, all that. But I also love some of his other quirkier stuff, like The Wake is amazing, and I think it has something to do with kind of sciencey, watery background too. But so I pretty much pick up and read everything he does, and I'm never disappointed. So
excellent.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've never read any of the Scott Snyder stuff before. Like I have never read Witches before, and I haven't read any of his, I don't think, runs of Batman since I'm not really in the, I haven't yet read much Batman.
Maybe we'll have to do a future one because Court of Owls is very, very intriguing.
I've heard that it's great. Like I've heard good things about it, and I kind of have an idea what's going on, but I just haven't read it.
Now Gotham has the Court of Owls too, so.
Oh, they do. Fancy.
They do, yeah. But yeah.
So you had read this. Did you read this when it came out? Like, did you pick it up
I did.
as a floppy?
I did, yeah.
Stack up versus reading it in the trade, I guess, to you.
Just as scary both ways, I think. Picking it up, single issue, first issue, you had no idea what you were getting. I mean, I follow, Scott Snyder on Twitter. He's always got very entertaining stuff going on over there. So, I knew a little bit about it here and there, but, and he had always been making comments about how it's, which is not like anything you've ever seen. And, teased it as, also, horror, and also called it deeply personal, and all these different things. So I had no idea what to expect, and it freaked me out. And I think I read the first 3 as they came out released, and then I think I kind of fell off of it, and so I actually didn't complete the volume 1, which is 1 through 6, until reading it this time around. And it was interesting because I read the first 3 one night before bed, and that was a bad idea. I freaked myself out and had to read some other stuff. And then read the final 3 in the daytime. And there's a lot going on, and I started thinking more about it, the undercurrents of it, as opposed to some of the surface horror. So it was definitely getting more out of it from the second read, because you're seeing a little bit more of some of the things that aren't the straight up horror part with the witches. You're looking a little bit more about what's going on in the family's life, and kind of some of the broader applications to that, just to life in general, with how we deal with anxiety and depression and our fears and that kind of thing. So head was spinning.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of horror. I don't read either. Yeah, so I had heard about this book before you mentioned it, and Meghan, being the Scott Snyder fan she is, was like, "Ooh, Halloween theme, we're gonna read Wytches." So I'm gonna have to pledge you, because this is not a book a pregnant woman should read.
No! Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so I had no clue what I was getting into. I mean, I'd seen the book in the comic store before, so I'd seen the cover, and I knew it was Wytches with a Y, and it was Scott Snyder, and people loved it, but I didn't have any idea of the content of it, other than it was dark and scary, and so I was not expecting it to be what it was. That said, I really enjoyed what it was, but I was not. I also had to. I'm glad I started it early. Sometimes I leave whatever book we're reviewing until the day of, so it's fresh in my head. But I was like a week ago, maybe I should just read this, a little bit in advance. So I was able to break it up and kind of read a couple of chapters at a time versus doing the whole thing in one go, because you just can't. You can't do it.
There's a lot to take in, and as you mentioned, at pregnancy with hormones and everything. But I mean, now we're gonna get into some other stuff. I mean, it deals with bullying of children, which can be depressing. There's mention of a miscarriage. There's the relationship with a parent and their parents and their children, and a mom who decides to pledge her child, so we've kind of been talking about pledging. Pledging is, these witches are basically in one spot, and they're these ancient beings that have all kinds of knowledge to the fact they can cure and do anything, but they require sacrifices to do that. So people, they play off people's fears and people's needs and wants and desires, and so people will pledge somebody else to the witches in order to get what they want. And pledging basically means they're eaten. And the witches, of course, like children best. And it does, the aspect that they like children. And then there's one part that they're burrows, as they're called, kind of where they live in the trees and underground. Ginger is planted around there. So it kind of plays off the gingerbread witch's house theme, which clever little plays on traditional witch stories. And they talk about the people that try to hunt the witches and or the people that are pledging the witches are actually those who were burned at the stakes back in the day as witches, as opposed to the witches with the Y in this story. But there's a lot, I think, that could really freak out a pregnant chick in addition to anybody else too.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and I would like to get into this maybe more a little later, but because there's a lot of issues, parenting themes in it.
Yeah.
And reading some of Scott Snyder's essays and interviews as the book was coming out, after I read the book, it was definitely apparent that he also was channeling those kind of parenting anxieties and how dealing with the emotions of becoming a parent and staying a person. And, as someone who is pregnant, that is something that I am quite at the forefront of my thought at the moment.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of themes in the book involving how we become parents, and how as parents we can raise our children despite the fact that children are not perfect. We are not perfect, and dealing with the fact that no one's perfect, and we're gonna have to deal with all that.
Yeah, definitely.
But before we jump, I was gonna say, before we jump too much into that, we should probably talk about some characters, just to kind of give a
little bit of a background.
Yeah. So the main characters in this story are really Charlie, who's the dad figure, who is a writer of children's books, and his wife Lucy, who is in a wheelchair after having a car crash. It is revealed later on. And their teenage daughter Sailor, who is has a lot of anxieties and depression, and she's bullied a lot in school, especially by this one girl named Annie. Well, that happened in the past before they moved, because Annie mysteriously disappears and everyone thinks that Sailor killed her, but there's no,
body.
Yeah, there's no body. It's just a rumor. Revealed to be untrue, but it is something, a bit of a rumor that if you're already a person who has, anxieties, that could definitely make it a lot worse. And then we have a couple of minor characters, including Reginald, who's a friend of the dad, as well as Clara, who is this
creepy old woman
with no legs, and
she's bald.
Then of course, it took me a long time to realize she was actually a woman until she started whipping out her
needle out of her chest. Yeah, she's a little creepy.
Yeah, and then the actual witches themselves. So I don't know, Megan. With that list in mind, where would you like to start? Who spoke to you?
Well, I mean, so we kind of started to talk about, there's a lot in this book, and you don't really realize how much it is until you start to dissect it later. The dad and the daughter, Charlie and Sailor, I mean, they have a great relationship, but it isn't without its rocks, and clearly they've had some ups and downs. Charlie, through the way the story is told, there's kind of back and forth between the past and the present. And he clearly was suffering, looks like alcoholism and some other issues and checking out. And I think part of it has to do with his own issues, and part of it has to do with their daughter Sailor having a lot of anxiety and depression and just nervousness in general, which I think they help each other to get through that. And I think the move was as much for him as it was for her. And it's, their relationship really is at the core of the book, because come to find out, it was the mom, Lucy, who has a long history, ancient, background of the family, has dealt with the witches and been pledged, and they had kind of got around it. And so she was essentially her family has been running from the witches for forever. And when things weren't quite working out, she kind of started to sense they'd gotten a sense with her. That's part of the ancient wisdom of the witches, is that they're always kind of they're waiting. They don't have to go looking for you because they know eventually you'll come back. And that, is part of some of the essays from Scott Snyder's stories about his personal experience in the woods and creepy woods as a kid, and then returning to them and seeing things and having these thoughts. But so when Sailor's being bullied, she thinks in order to get the witches off of her back, she actually pledges Annie, the bully, to the witches, hoping that that would solve a lot of their problems. Obviously, it'd take away Sailor's bully and it would take away the witches coming after them. But she makes a comment later saying that the witches rejected her pledge, which that kind of, it doesn't really get into that much more. So it's kind of very intriguing, and it makes you wonder, if there's more of that to come later. And then because that didn't work, and because there's clearly issues, that with her relationship with her husband and all this, and because of Sailor, so then she pledges Sailor, and her husband is not okay with that. and needless to say, he wants to save his daughter, and but he ends up doing so in a self-sacrificing way at the end. So it's really kind of touching because it's going back and forth with a past scenes where he's almost at like a book reading, book signing, and what he's saying to his family after having gotten through some anxiety and depression. And it's so well done. Like the pieces, there are times when some of the, the thought bubbles get a little, or the words and letters get a little confusing, and you're not exactly sure who said what every once in a while. But other than that one critique I have, I'm just blown away by the book. I mean, there's a lot there, which I know I keep saying, but it's, horror as a genre is about playing on our fears, and it doesn't, depending on the medium and depending on what type of horror, it does it in a lot of different ways, but it's usually at its core, it's playing on your basic human fears that we all have. And Witches takes that and does it well, and also, forces you to think about your own issues. And I think this is where, Travis has been open, before about dealing with some anxiety and depression, and I have too. And so I think, that being at some of its core of the book, maybe that speaks to me a little bit more there. I'm not quite sure, but
yeah, I mean, I think definitely that Charlie and Sailor are the two main characters of the story. And I mean, I kind of actually wanted more from the mom's character.
Why she did what she did?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's kept a little intentionally vague up until the climax, but then the climax was so, quick that I'm like, wait, but we didn't get any, backstory there.
Yeah.
The plot really follows Charlie and Sailor, and most of it is around their interactions either with other people or with each other. We only get like one scene that's Lucy with, someone else.
Yeah, it would be nice to see Lucy with Sailor in the past and how their relationships were. Yeah.
I mean, but the fact that kind of like you've got Charlie, who's the dad, and it plays a lot on, especially in the flashbacks, how he tried to cope with Sailor's anxiety, and in some ways that were very positive, and in some ways that were probably more negative than helpful to her. And
pushing her to climb to the top of a Ferris wheel.
Yeah. Well, even, I mean, and there were some, there are some ways that he was trying to actually, I mean, and in that case, I think he was more frustrated than trying to help. But, even the ways where he thought he was helping and he wasn't. So like the scene in the kind of playground, kind of like a McDonald's Playland-esque sort of
right, the
tubing,
with the matches, yeah. Crawling around in the dark.
Yeah. So it's like, he thinks he's trying to be helpful, and it turns out that he is actually not helping her in that situation. Then it's kind of like parenting fail. So kind of like this emotional, like how
do you help your kids when all you want to do is help them, but you don't know how?
And it's like, you have the things that you want to help them with, but then there's also things like bullies and your other parent giving them over to the witches, that like other people. It's maybe a bit of an extreme example, but like you have other forces that are playing into your children's life that you can't control. So not only do your children have their own desires, feelings, way that they live, but there are these other people that also are going to influence them that you have no control over. So it's like you can't control that, and that's kind of like one of the scarier things in the book from that point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting in that regard, because I think the best, this is horror, but like the best kind of like horror things are not these spooky, scary witches, but these real, very close and tangible things that are right there, that are just out of your control. So that's really the scary bits. And then the creepy monsters that live in the woods are also scary.
I know. Yeah. I was just flipping back through it, and we're definitely talking a lot about the relationships and the emotion, but there are really scary witches and really creepy things going on in this book that we haven't even gotten to. Like, Sailor gets attacked in her house by the witches, and a lump grows on her throat, which is like an eyeball. Like, it's and Jock and Hollingsworth, like the art and the colors, it's disturbing, so disturbing, and so well done. And the way the panels move across the page, I think sometimes freaks you out more than just because there's so much motion with it. When Annie gets pulled into the tree by the witches at the very beginning, and you've got these letters with the sounds, and it's creepy.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about the art and the colors is that it's very dark and mysterious, but in a way that's not dark and mysterious. So I guess like one of my complaints is like watching, the X-Files or something, is that you're kind of just like, turn on the light, I can't see what's going on
and heaven help you if you try and watch it during the daytime.
Right, yeah, because you can't, the glare on your TV.
Yeah, you can't see anything.
It's well done that it kind of highlights the area of each panel that needs to be highlighted. So, you see the character that you need to see, but then you kind of have these shadowy things in the background that you're like, oh, maybe there's more witches over there. Like I'm going to have to take another second to look at this panel and figure out what's really going on.
And like with most good horror, the witches are kind of teased at. You get shapes and like a highlight for eyes, but you don't really get the witch until much later in the volume when you see them in their full glory.
Kind of more Stranger Things-esque sort of lighting in that.
Right, and I also was struck by that, it's definitely more of the blues and the greens and the darker colors in the nighttime panels, as opposed to more of the yellows and oranges in the daytime panels.
Yeah.
So it's you have the sense of night and day as you read it, in addition to everything else. And since we're on colors right now, Hollingsworth has such a unique approach, with the splatters that, could be distracting but aren't, that are all hand done and overlaid digitally. It's so unique, and it gives so much more dimension to the book too.
I like in the back of the trade, they actually kind of have a progressive shot, if I can find it. Probably not. Oh, there you go. This is the one where she's got the thing in her boob. So
right.
Sorry.
There you go. We said this wasn't a good one for kids to begin with.
Yeah, so. This is not. But so it kind of shows like how they take the original art and then they do, the adding the shading and everything, and then they have these watercolored, like hand done watercolors and acrylic splatters that are then digitized and put over it, so the final art looks more abstract almost. Like it's kind of got this whole underworld sort of feel to it. The whole book, you know, it's got these very creepy and mysterious splatters over it that are kind of, you know, adding to the mystery that you've got this extra layer on top of the art that is adding to it.
So you just showed Clara with her boob. What did you think of Clara?
You know, I wasn't quite sure what to think. I thought at first that she was like the woman from the beginning who was in the tree and then like escaped. Right. But I think it's really interesting because I know that going forward, which I haven't read any more past this trade, but that kind of like...
there is yet. I think they were
still working on it.
I think they were just in September. I think they were starting volume 2.
Well, because I know, yeah. So this woman Clara is kind of this part of they're like witch hunters, so they're not the people who are worshiping the witches. So basically, there's the witches, which are these creepy, mysterious, evil beings. The people that worship the witches, like the people that pledge other people to get eaten. So they like use the witches for good at other people's expense. Then there are the people that fight the witches, which we don't really know much about, except that we've met one of them in this book. So we kind of have her limited knowledge that she shares with the dad. And then there's the rest of us who go along our lives blissfully, not knowing or caring about these evil beings. She's an interesting character because she definitely, you know, she's
scary and creepy.
She's scary and creepy. She like is gonna tell you, you know, as it is. She knocks a guy out with her leg, and it's pretty cool.
Was she actually in his house? Like, did she? So that in this, you know, in the book, you know, their sailor's gone missing, and they're looking for her parents are kind of looking for her, and there's a cop that's seeming to help them, and Charlie goes back to his house and he's attacked by Clara, and that's, you know, comes where, you know, gets knocked out, and she, you know, sticks a needle in her boob and does something to him, and then he ends up like having his veins on his stomach like give him a clue as to where to go looking. But he then has to go to Here Coast, right? I'm trying to find that. Yeah, Here Point is where he needs to go to see her. So, and he's looking on this map and finding it because that's what his vein said. So, how did she get back to Here Point really quick, or was she not even at the house? And I just started thinking about that recently. I'm like, was she actually there? And then because she doesn't have legs. Her legs were eaten by the witches, so she has fake legs. So,
I thought it was like a time difference.
They do have dates in here. I guess I didn't read those that quickly.
Well, they don't have the date on that. I was looking back at the first panel, but I thought this was like before people knew she was missing. So like, because she had stolen the school bus and run off to the woods, and like that's when. So he was at home working. So like Lucy was off at work. Sailor was supposedly off at school, and he was at home, and then he heard a ruckus up in Sailor's room, so he like went up to Sailor's room, and like that's when Clara was there. And so she attacked him while Sailor was in the woods. And then
okay, so there's a panel with them in the woods, you know, next to the crash school bus, and that says October 9th, 2014. And then there's another panel with him holding up his shirt and seeing kind of the veins move back and not say anything, and he's asking Lucy about it, and that also says October 9th, 2014.
Oh yeah, no, I think it was the same day. I think that like that morning he drops her off at school, she goes to school, and then that's like when she steals the school bus. So like Lucy's off at work at the hospital, Sailor's at school, and he's at home working because he's, you know, supposed to be writing this book. And so it's the afternoon when he's attacked, and then they discover Sailor's missing, and he goes to so he's already been attacked by the time he realizes Sailor's missing and goes to the woods.
Okay.
And then it kind of flashes back again so it flashes back to earlier in the day. And then he goes home and sees the here on his, oh no, wait, maybe it is.
I think it was she's gone, and
because
he
she's
thinks
gone, she's missing, and he's
she's
like,
missing.
oh, she's at here point.
Goes, yeah. Well, no,
So
he goes upstairs because he hears something, and then that's when he's attacked.
Yeah.
But I think he was thinking Sailor was up there, and then later he goes to Here Point. But
yes, because he goes to the woods. He goes to the woods because they say,
how did Clara get to Here Point that fast? Because she was there clearly hanging out and waiting for him.
I think she could do it.
She's got a mysterious. She does move fast. And she's got all the tools to kill witches. So apparently you need bullets that have like rat body bones material in them to harm witches, and you need some awful, awful smelling stuff to cover yourself with so they don't smell you.
It reminds me of the Roald Dahl The Witches book.
Well, I think, a lot of different influences, clearly from his own life, and that, Scott, in his essays at the back, talks about, his experiences in the woods, which led him to kind of come up with some of this concept. And then also, dealing with anxiety and depression as a kid and as an adult. So that plays into the themes. I don't know if you followed his Instagram or his Twitter, you would see that when he goes out on runs, he tends to run into a particular deer all the time. And he started calling the deer Coach Deer. And I feel like that has to do with why there's the random deer that ends up in the study and coughs up all kinds of grossness at the very beginning. But I feel like that was Coach Deer because every time, like, there's all these pictures of Scott Snyder when he's like, sweaty from his run. And then, there's a deer like right there in the background. And it's like every single one. And then it progressed to the deer had a kid, and there's an albino deer now. Randomness. So maybe Scott actually does know witches.
Interesting.
Random fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think reading some of the essays in the back were really interesting too, when he's talking about kind of where this came from, and kind of from his childhood idea that him and his friend made up this whole story about these witches living in the woods by their house, and
they had a bat like Negan.
Yeah, and kind of that childhood, you hear some rustle behind you and you turn around and you think you see something, but you don't really see something, and then you're like, oh, it must have been the witches, or
right.
It was they're just fast and hide in trees. And I thought that was kind of interesting, reading how he took like this childhood idea and then kind of melded it with his now adult fears. So his childhood fears meets his adult fears, and created this very scary book that is scary for all ages, but don't read it to children because you would be really regretful about that.
Yes, so much.
One of the things
go ahead.
I was going to talk about Claire a little bit because you'd asked me what I thought of her, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is that she basically asked Charlie for help to kill herself, which I was kind of shocked by. I mean, I understand the need for the character to kind of be there to help Charlie, but then also not be there, because it wouldn't make much sense plot-wise if there was, this witch hunter there who knew how to kill witches, who didn't try to help. So it was done in such a way that I was intrigued by the thought. I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure what I think still. I probably need to read it a second or third time, but basically, from what I was gathering, like Claire was talking about the idea that the witches kind of have this lice that's basically like depression. So basically she's been infected by this witch depression, and she like has to kill herself. So I was a little worried. I mean, by the fact, I mean, she's, you know, how they're handling, you know, that kind of versus how they were handling like Sailor's anxiety, which was interesting to me. But I'm not quite sure I have dissected it enough to make a, I don't know, like, you know, formal analysis of it. I just thought that was really interesting and something that I would like to know more about. Did you find that part?
Yeah, I found that and I was going back. Yeah, they even got the rooted ones in the Barrow and Litchfield, which makes it that worse, much worse of a witch's burrow. But they warned me not to come. Too late now. I got the mites. See,
the mites, and it was like
mites. Yeah, witches growing them in their hair, parasitic. Some townie slips them to you. They get in your head, make you want to fucking off yourself. Tried cooking blocker, but the mites are too strong. I don't do it now. I'll do it in my sleep. Rather be by my fucking hand, please. And your daughter's being cooked a lot. Yeah. So the mites, the witches grow the mites in their hair. And yeah, it is, you're right. It is about them infecting you in a way that just makes everything horrible and you want to kill yourself. And so she's taking control of her own destiny by doing it the way she wants to do it.
Yeah, but I just found it strange because she's like, you know, she's been doing this since she was 7, you know, like she was pledged when she was 7, and then she, you know, they ate her legs, but she got away, and so she's basically been hunting them and fighting them since, you know, obviously many years. They don't actually say how old she is. Or do they? Maybe. But
I don't think they do. But yeah, you're right. I think it is. I mean, given that the vast majority of the book we're talking about, you know, both Charlie and Sailor's anxieties and depressions and how they're dealing with emotions, and then to kind of have this really intriguing character kill herself like strong, because it's too much. Yeah, that is. I don't think I thought too much about that at the time when I was reading it. So
I mean, it makes sense from a plot point of view, but from like kind of this idea of, you know, we're tackling ideas around, you know, mental illness, it kind of was a little disturbing to be like, oh,
yeah.
You know, that's how you're gonna handle that. So that was kind of the one bit that I was like, I'm not sure. I like how they treated that character.
Yeah, it would be interesting to get more thoughts from them about that. Because yeah, you're right. Now thinking about it, it is odd that, you know, especially because the way it is written, maybe there's something else about the mites that we don't get. Maybe they'll tackle that in volume 2.
Yeah, and I heard that volume 2 is like, or I read that it's going to be more about the irons and kind of like the witch hunting people. So
maybe we'll understand. Maybe we will understand why, you know, that the mites infection or something, you know, more about that. I'm very disturbed now.
Sorry, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Yeah. No, but I mean, it does, it makes you want to read it again too. And look, I mean, I was very confused about, I mean, even, you know, the needle in the boob, and I clearly it had something to do with the clue in his veins about getting him there. But I mean, there could have been, I think, easier ways. Like, so why did that have to be that way? And maybe we need like some flashbacks on Clara, you know?
Yeah.
But, well, and yeah. This is just because I just stumbled across this page. This is like when a cop takes Charlie to like their burrow, and it's just this giant 2-page, you know, this tree. It's just, it's gorgeous, but it's scary as hell. Lucy, the mom, because as I flip through some of her panels, because they're lighter in color, so they kind of pop out a little bit more too with the oranges. So yeah, I mean, her family, she has this family history, where they had a child that was born specifically to be pledged, and he kind of spun it around and pledged his parents and then ran and hid themselves. And I guess that's part of the whole big plot, is that once, witches have your scent or whatever, there's a connection. Maybe that goes back to the mites too. There's this connection to them, and which is why you always go back to them in some way. I'm still confused about her motivations, and why wouldn't you try to run? I mean, she says, her family kind of grew up in the irons more to hide, so why would you go back to the witches knowing all that?
I mean, that's kind of what she said, is that the witches always like draw you in. They don't need to come find you. Like, you'll go back to them. But I mean, what confused me about Lucy is that, I didn't see the twist that she was the evil one who pledged them coming, which is...
I was very, very horrified and very sad that she pledged her own daughter.
Yeah, I mean, because I was very worried because, she's a doctor, so you kind of have this idea, and the one scene you do have with her by herself is that she's kind of like there to help, and she is a person who wants to help make people better and wants to make people feel better. And then she kind of, she's actually in the flashbacks, they have Sailor, and Charlie has a lot of issues with Sailor's anxiety and his own, issues that he's working through. And she's kind of like this calming presence there. But then, she is pregnant again, and she gets in a car accident basically caused by one of these witches, which causes her to lose the ability to walk and also causes her to lose the child. And so I don't understand why, I mean, maybe because it's like a fetus and fetus aren't children, but like why that kind of like child sacrifice isn't good enough for the witches.
Yeah, and that's, she makes that comment too. I thought that would be enough, and then she pledged Annie and thought that would be enough. So why isn't it enough? That is a good,
and like, why is your only alternative like
flesh and blood from your
like
family line? Yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't seem like every other. I mean, it does come out that almost everybody in the town has some sort of link to the witches because they've pledged somebody somewhere, kind of thing. But, so when your family line, when someone has been pledged, does that mean every generation somebody has to be pledged from your family line? They're clearly, we need more about the witches.
Well, I think the fact is that her grandfather escaped, and so it was like he escaped his pledge.
Parents. Oh, I guess because he was pledged but didn't end up going.
He was pledged, and so like the whole
right.
I mean, but so I think that like the family hadn't given a child
to them,
so they had to like, because I mean the way she did it, like the way she was talking with Charlie afterwards was like, when she's trying to convince him to let Sailor go and to give up Sailor,
right?
And she was like, "Look, they healed me. What I'm getting out of this deal is that A, our family is no longer cursed, and B, I can walk again and I can have children again. So we can let Sailor go because she's just a screw up, and we can have another kid and raise it, and it'll be fine."
Right, and be normal. Which at the one of the flashbacks too, Sailor makes a comment to her dad that she wanted to be a big sister to a normal kid too. So that was kind of a heartbreaking kind of scene too, because it's just like knowing that she knows she has these issues, and she feels like she's a burden on her parents and causes trouble to them because of her issues. And so she wanted to have a sibling that was normal, that, could help them all out. And that's what, they thought they were getting, but then the car crash, they lost that. So and Lucy's comments about, we can just forget her, we'll be wiped clear. Well, we won't remember her at all, so it'll be fine. Yeah.
Which again, as someone who's pregnant, is very disturbing to have these characters who are like, oh, this child is no good. Like, we could just toss them out with the bathwater and have a new one, which seems very disturbing and more scary than the actual witches
Yeah.
that they are giving her to. The fact that, you know, she's just so nonchalant about like, you know, we tried, that one was a mess up, like let's do it again, which seems horrible. And, you know, as you're reading the book, like Sailor doesn't seem like such a bad kid. Like,
No.
you know, yeah, she has anxiety, but like it's not a reason, you know, shouldn't be murdered. Like it's, you know,
No, she does
you
seem
have
like
anxiety.
she seems like a great kid who really likes her parents and obviously feels bad, you know, that she's caused us trouble. Yeah, I don't know.
You just want the whole family to go to like therapy and be like, sit down and work out this stuff, guys.
Right, right. I know. Not pledge them to the witches.
So,
but when you go to the pledge to pledge, so Sailor has been pledged and now she's running, right? So clearly that should come back up at some point.
yeah. I mean, and there's kind of there's the scene at the end of all the letters and everything. There's like one final scene. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that fell in the floppies at all.
You know, I'd have to go back and look at my single issues because I don't think I read my 3 through 6 of the single issues.
I mean, it might just be an extra now that they've got the trade out, but they've got this one tiny little scene that's set in like Ohio 2003. So I'm not sure.
So that's well before, because everything else was what, 2014 was when Sailor.
2011 I think was when it was set. Was the 2014. 2011 was when the accident
2011, was. And some of the flashbacks, but 2014. So this was in 2003, which I don't think I paid attention to that timeline when I read it before. So who are these people?
Yeah, so basically you have this one. So I didn't know if this was who this was, but you know, you've got this one woman who is living very secluded life, and she's got this very small baby, and her brother comes to visit, and the brother ends up like drugging her because he's pledged her baby. And then kind of, I'm not sure if the witches get both of them at the end, like.
Or I'm wondering if they just got him. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it just kind of it leaves on this very weird, mysterious cliffhanger that I'm not quite sure where it is going.
And apparently you can't look at them when they're taking somebody.
Oh, maybe she was making a mental pledge or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's totally intriguing panels because, you know, it's like her, you know, holding
it's from her point of view. Yeah.
So and so it's him holding up, you know, the hand. Yes.
And you see it like this.
Yes. And she's peeking through and he's telling her not to look. And then, you know, it's like, you looked, and he's like pulled out of view. So I don't know, but I will obviously read volume 2 whenever it comes out.
Keep me posted.
Yeah. I'll read it in the daytime. Excellent. And not at night. And I'll give you warnings before we talk about it.
We're getting close to the end of our hour. Do you have any final closing thoughts on the book? Recommendations, who you'd recommend it to, who you wouldn't recommend it to?
No small children and no pregnant women. You know, I think those other mental.
I think it just froze a bit. Sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah, if you've struggled with any of those mental demons, I think it's interesting.
I think it might have been me because I think the Cubs apparently just scored 3 runs and my neighbor was screaming. Sorry.
Well, the Indians are up right now, so that wouldn't be this.
Not anymore.
It's the top of the 5th. It's 3-1 Cubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my neighbor was screaming. They're in the 5th now. Okay.
Yeah. The Indians are batting. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
Cubs need to win tonight.
I like to play Cubs or murder with my neighbor. Every time my neighbor screams, I have to like Google search what's happening with the cubs to make sure that he's not being.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, but yeah, anybody recommendations? Yeah, I think if you struggle with any kind of mental issues, I think it's an interesting book to read because I think it does help you think about things a little bit. And I think especially when you read some of Scott Snyder's essays at the end too, it kind of puts things in perspective too a little bit about horror and just general fears and realizing that everybody else deals with them too, even if it's not as publicized or open as it maybe should be. So I think I'm not a horror fan either. I do not really like scary stuff, but I enjoyed it. Like I said, I don't know how many times I would go to read it again because it's scary, but it's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a horror book, it is very gorgeous. Like, it's not gruesome in its gore. It's very well done.
It is shocking and gory at times, but it's palatable.
It's still pretty when it's gory, you know, it's still still very well done, which is not, I mean, like, I'm someone who art is very important to me in a comic, and so having that very beautifully drawn gore, and you know, it's kind of like the Judith and Holofernes painting, you know, so you know, you can do this beautiful drawing of like a woman chopping up a man's head, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all this blood splatter, beautiful, you know. So it's kind of along that line of you've got this book that's just very, very gorgeous, elegant, but elegant in its horror and gore. I would definitely not recommend this to pregnant women or people who are in the process of becoming or have just become parents.
Yeah, there's a lot in those relationships in this book. Yeah.
Unless you want
deeper than it seems. Yeah.
If you are in that stage and you do like to, and you want to be challenged and you want to read something that will probably make you cry in public, definitely read it. I'm recommending tissues along with your book. So it's an easy read, but a challenging read at the same time. I think sometimes that's tough to do with comics, and I think Snyder is definitely one of the comic writers that does that very well with most of his works. Yeah, I mean it's not going to take you long to read. You're just going to have to like pace yourself. So and think about it, which I appreciate and I like. Yeah. Movie rights have been sold. Yes, I was going to mention that. So that's going to happen. Which do you have any Dreamcast? I think Millie Bobby Brown, Miss 11, would be amazing as Sailor, actually. Other than that, I didn't think much more about it because I don't know that this is a movie I'd actually be able to see. Yeah. I wonder how scary they would actually I feel like make it. It would definitely be one of those where it's kind of the tension and the horror and the build is off screen, which for me makes it even more terrifying. I think that this would be one that could do that extremely well. I mean, for me, this is more of a psychological thriller than a horror jump scare kind of thing. I mean, and I could see them going horror jump scare, but I think the real intrigue and the real meat of it is in that the relationships between the characters and the pledging world. And I think if they did a balance between the two, it could be a really great runaway hit of a movie. But I still don't know if I could watch it. It'd have to be one that I had to wait to watch in my home with people in the daytime. With all the lights on. And then have some really goofy rom-com to watch afterwards. Okay. I can see that. Skipping ahead to next month. Yes. Totally switching gears. Well, kind of switching gears. We're like, we've had two pretty intense books in a row, so let's make it a little lighter. And next month, our theme here is Disnerds for all the Disney fans, which I can't tell, Megan, are you a Disney fan? I can't tell at all.
Not at all, with my Haunted Mansion ghosts and my Mickey Witch's ears.
And your
Not a
Esmeralda
Disney. Yes,
photo
yes, right. And next to a Haunted Mansion postcard,
Yeah.
Not a Disney fan.
Mine are somewhere. I don't know where my Haunted Mansion postcard is.
And my Haunted Mansion pillow. So
yes, Tomb Sweet Tomb.
I think I'll like next month's theme.
Yes. So the book we have picked is not necessarily a Disney book, because I really wanted to do the Enchanted Tiki Room.
Oh my God!
There's only like one floppy out so far, so we can't.
We're
talk
totally
about
gonna have to do that next year, because I love the Tiki Room, and I'm gonna spare you all and not sing the song right now. But
I'm singing it in my head. Don't worry.
I've
only seen it once, and it's in my head.
That's definitely the But so we didn't have that for our option, so we picked one of the Star Wars books.
Since Disney now owns the Star Wars franchise, we figured we could do that.
So Vader. We're going with Darth Vader. I'm kind of excited. I love Vader. My text tone is Vader's breathing. So, which is kind of funny. Whenever I watch Star Wars and you hear Vader, I start looking for my phone. So I'm excited to read it. I have not read this at all yet before.
I have also not read that at all. I've been reading the Poe one, and I've got one of the Leia ones to read somewhere, but I'm excited. I've not read it.
I read the first issue of Lando, which I really enjoyed, but
fun.
Yeah, that one's a good one. But Travis really likes this one and speaks highly of it, so I'm excited.
This one's for him. Okay.
Yay!
All right, and that's probably going to be November 27th, that Sunday after Thanksgiving. So once you get your family on, let's come talk about a dysfunctional family of Darth Vader.
Maybe
such a good dad. Talking about dad role models.
Right? There you go. See, we are moving in theme wise.
All right. Well, I'll let you get going, and we'll see you all next month.
Bye.
Bye.